Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're installing an amplifier and subwoofer in this 2014 Toyota FJ Cruiser. Now in this install we're going to show you how to integrate this aftermarket amplifier and subwoofer to an existing aftermarket radio. Let's get started. Alright, so here at the bench, now the parts that we're using for our install, first and foremost is the amp and sub that the customer wants us to put in. They brought us this Renegade mono amplifier for a subwoofer, and the sub that we're putting in is a little 10-inch Scar Audio sub. Now the box that we're putting in, we're already test fitting. It fits over the passenger side wheel well area, and it mounts to the factory anchor points there in the cargo space. Now to integrate this amp and sub in the vehicle here, we do need a bit of wiring, and we're going with this amplifier wiring kit. It's a 4-gauge. This comes with power wire, ground wire, remote turn on wire, RCAs, fuse and fuse holder, some speaker wire, and some odds and ends, everything that you'll need for your install. Because we are integrating to an existing aftermarket radio, we don't need a line-out converter, but if you did, and if you're keeping the factory radio, or if you're replacing the existing JBL subwoofer, then we'll link a line-out converter down in the description of the video. Our amplifier here, it's a pretty small footprint. It should fit okay up underneath the driver's side front seat. What we're going to do is get this mounted there using existing anchor locations that the factory floor mat anchors use, and so we'll snag those bolts as well. So what we've done is we've cut up a piece of 12 by 16 ABS piece of plastic here. We've cut molded it, basically used a heat gun, kind of got some S bends in there, made little feet that will snag those mount locations, and we mounted our amplifier to that piece of ABS plastic. This will prevent it from sliding around up underneath the seat. So at this point, what we need to do is start pulling our power wire from up underneath the hood by the battery area to the area up underneath the driver's side front seat. Additionally, we do need to also remove the seat. We'll just tip it back to give us enough space to get this mounted. Now up underneath the hood here, the battery is on the driver's side front corner. We've already started mocking up a fuse and fuse holder here. Nothing's hooked up, but essentially we need to connect our power wire to the positive post here on the battery. There's a nice little terminal that we can go there as well. We'll need to go through the firewall. There's a good grommet, which we'll show you here in a minute. So from our battery, we need to go through an inline fuse and then through that firewall to underside the driver's side seat. So up underneath, looking further back here, there is our factory grommet. We're going to be using that grommet, and generally there's a little nipple you can cut off or hole, or you can poke through that rubber. Usually right on top of our main loom there's going to be the nipple that sticks out. You can cut that off with a pair of flush cuts, and that's going to be a hole right into the cabin of the car. So that's a perfect location. We're going to use that in our install here today and start feeding our wire into the inside of the vehicle. We went ahead and then cut that little nipple off right above the main harness here, and in that location it exposes a little hole, and we grabbed a metal hanger, our notorious hanger that we use here on the channel to feed wire through firewall boots. But we poke that through, and now we can fill it easily from the other side. What we've done here is we grabbed our power wire and we taped it to it. Now we got to lube this up really well with some soap and water. It's going to allow us, when we pull from the cabin side, to pop and slip through that boot as easily as possible. Up underneath here, there's our main boot here. That's where that guy pops on out right there at the top. So it's perfect. So what we're going to do now is loop up our wire. We're going to stay in here and go ahead and pull that wire through the firewall. Alright, so we got our ground done. As you saw, we pulled this up. There's a good little 10mm up underneath the carpet here. Since this is all pulled apart, makes it really nice and easy to get there. Used a wire brush, cleaned up the paint so it's bare metal. Added our ground to that factory ground. Now, before we took off that factory ground, always remove the negative off of your battery. Got our ground and our power. Those go up to the power and ground terminals. The amplifier, our power goes through, obviously up through the firewall to the battery there. So that takes care of power and ground. Our speaker wire output, we ran up through that hole in the carpet. And this goes down around. Since this kick panel was off, it just comes out there. But we got to work our way over to the passenger side rear of the cargo area, where that's going to connect to the box, and it'll be our next segment where we get that installed and mounted. Remote turn-on wire and RCA cable. So we went with our remote turn-on wire through there, and our RCA is on the other side through there. While this was out, we lifted the carpet all the way up, and we fished up there, and we'll show you how we're going to pull out the dash here so we can get connected to the RCA output and connect our remote turn-on wire to the remote out of our aftermarket radio. We have our bass knob cable. We left a little bit of length here. We'll mount our bass knob kind of in this area. We went ahead and got our amplifier mounted. As you can see, we used these anchor locations. Amp is nice and solid. Still plenty of space for the vent to vent out. And really, it's not going anywhere, especially if you have a rig that bounces along the trail. You don't want this sliding around. Since this isn't carpet, this is a nice pad. So that's in and done. We still need to set our gains with an SMD DD1, but we'll go ahead and get our gains all set up here. Next thing we need to do is start putting all these panels back together. We'll head under the hood, show you how we're making our connections there. Then finally, we need to go ahead and get our sub and box mounted up. Up underneath the hood, that's where we passed our power wire through. That came along here. We split loomed it. Now we made a little fuse mount out of leftover ABS plastic from our amp mount, and we're snagging that 10mm little placement there for the battery tie down. That allows us to mount our little fuse and fuse holder there. Looks actually really nice, and a little shorty up to that 12mm post here on the battery terminal. We're not going to the tightening stud, we're going to that 12mm nut there on the top of the post. So that's done. Obviously, we made all our connections when the negative was off the battery and the amplifier was completely hooked up. We then can put the negative back on the battery. So we're done underneath the hood here. Let's go ahead and turn our attention over to getting the subwoofer and box mounted in the cargo area. Alright, so we're back here at the bench. We're starting to prep our box. Now, the way you mount your box, there's actually a hole there, and it comes with a bolt that passes through and snags a factory mounting location. As for the terminal cup here, it doesn't come pre-wired. We pop that on out. We soldered on some OFC 14 gauge wire here. It's ready to mount up here. We got our subwoofer. It's dual voice coil 4 ohms, so we're going to wire it in parallel and then throw one of these terminals up here, and that should see 2 ohms at the amp. Now, it doesn't come pre-drilled. And we also had to router it out just a hair bigger, so our Scar Audio, which has traditionally just a bigger basket, will fit and seat properly in there and have a nice seal up and around the gasket and the woofer itself. So we'll pre-drill our holes, but we won't mount it yet. And the reason is we got to get that 10mm bolt in, and then we will mount it in the car. Hence why we're going to pre-drill and get everything prepped here at the bench before we head back to the car. Alright, so we need to connect our RCAs and a remote turn-on wire to our existing aftermarket radio. Now, obviously, we didn't show you how we install the radio, we have tons of FJ videos actually on the channel. So feel free to check one of those out if you're looking to install one for yourself. There's 2 Phillips screws here on your outer trim rings. Go ahead and grab it by the bottom here and just work it out. 2 clips on each side, just like that. Now you're gonna have 2 screws on each side of your dash bezel. Next here, just go ahead and give the bezel a pull. It should just unsnap. So now you'll have 2 10mm bolts on each side of the radio, and that allows the radio to come on out. So screws are out, your radio comes out. All right, so what we've done here, so we plugged our RCA cables. Now this radio only has a single sub output, so we have a little splitter here for RCA cables, but we connect it to the sub output, and then the blue-white wire on the back of the radio, in most instances, is a remote turn-on wire. That's where we connected our yellow remote turn-on wire. So with those connections now made, we can tuck the radio back into the dash here and bolt everything up. Again, if you don't have an aftermarket radio, as we do, you can certainly use a line-out converter and just tap into your speaker signal outputs from the radio in order for you to simply have that sub-output for an aftermarket amplifier. We can link in a plug-and-play harness down in the description of the video, but if you do have JBL, rather than connecting here at the radio, you'll have to connect it back at the amplifier. All right, so we got the sub box all in, everything mounted. We get a little piece of backstrapping there and just snag that lower mount. And then we'll need to make just a small little notch there, but that piece will fit on there and snap into place. That's about it. Radio is all back in. It's looking awesome, nice and clean. Got the seat all back in, everything's mounted back down. Amplifier is just tucked way up underneath there, but the nice thing is nobody would ever know. That's right there. So that's about it for this install. This sounds awesome. It's a nice sealed enclosure, and it does actually fit a larger 10-inch sub instead of the factory 8-inch. So we're going to get a lot more output out of this box as it's designed for an aftermarket sub versus trying to retrofit the factory box with a new speaker. In the end, it turns out great. We love the way it looks and love the way it sounds. Now, if you want to see any other content on this generation FJ, we, on a separate FJ, have done a radio, backup camera install, speaker installation, 4-channel amp, things like that. So if you want to check that video content on out, we'll link those videos down in the description as well. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button if you like what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time, and we'll see you in the next video.